This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 141 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I am Craig. Over there, he's Chris. How's it going, Chris?
It's going well. How you doing, Craig?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I'm really looking forward to today's episode because we're talking about October financials, and you promised me in the last episode that I'd be happier today than I was for the last 18 financials episodes.
4 months. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Definitely better than the last 4.
Yeah. Okay, so we're doing October 2023 financials today. Hopefully the numbers are looking a little better than they have been in the past. Let's see. Before we get started, want to remind everybody to go to haulinassetsllc.com, check out full show notes, make your comments there. You can find, links and documents like for today's episode, all these financials documents. The profit and loss statement, it's all there. You can check that out at haulinassetsllc.com. You should also go to motorcarrierhq.com. Go grab one of those t-shirts that Chris is wearing right now. I'm not repping. I'm a bad shill.
You're bad influence.
That's right. Anyway, so motorcarrierhq.com. Obviously, lots of other tools and resources that I mention every other time. Don't want to forget that. All right, Chris, before we do numbers, how are things going out on the road? Oh, I wanted to ask you, how are things going with dispatching? You said you were going to add some more trucks in November to your roster.
Yeah, I was out of town most of last week, so we actually put that off till this week. So I've taken a couple other trucks on. I actually haven't booked a load for them yet. The loads that they're currently on are finishing up in a few days, and I've started looking for loads for them, but haven't booked anything for them. But it's going really well. Still learning a lot. I'm doing a few things. Like I spent some time with October's numbers. I'm trying to hone into a little more exact figure, especially with us running a higher number of miles this month, what our cost per mile is. And it's, the more miles you run, those fixed costs get spread out over a greater number of miles. And so that can really cause your cost per mile to fluctuate a decent bit. So I'm kind of trying to figure that out so I can use that number to kind of make some better decisions on, when am I willing to take a load for a little bit lower rate, at least cover some of the costs to get me out of a bad area. So learning some of those things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe the next episode I might start to talk some of the lessons I'm learning on dispatching.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate an episode like that. Excellent. Anything else? Any other updates that you want to give us before we do numbers?
Guess what I get to do right after we get done recording?
What? Drive a truck.
I'm going to go drive a truck. Yeah, I'm going to go deliver a load to the beloved Walmart.
Nice.
Yeah. You know what Walmart's kind of...
The massive distribution center here in Utah?
Yeah, a big distribution center, 30, 40 miles away from where we are. It's so not a whole lot of miles, but Walmarts they're usually a lovely trip. They're kind of like your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend. Well, not ex, like your boyfriend or girlfriend that you're in a bad relationship. You just can't really end because... Yeah,
I'm sensing some sarcasm and a little bit of cynicism in there, Chris.
Yeah, maybe heavy on the cynicism. Walmarts are just, you can basically count on you're going to be there for at least 4 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things it's all about them. Yeah, they're going to do whatever is best for them. They don't really care about my time.
Right. Well, I care about your time, Chris, and that's why we have a library of 140 other episodes that you can listen to while you're waiting.
Yeah, I'll have some waiting time. I could listen.
All right. Well, good luck on the Walmart run, I suppose. Should we do some numbers?
Let's do it.
Let's do some
jump
numbers.
Right in.
Yeah, this is the quickest we've gotten to them in a while. Chris, you promised me sunshine, butterflies. I believe roses are opening in November or October. I guess these numbers are. Okay, tell me the story. Let's start with the total miles run in October.
128,771 miles.
Whoa.
Which is a good 20,000 miles more than we've ever done, which is it's pretty awesome.
That's on 11 trucks, right?
That's on 11 trucks, yeah.
Okay, 128. Wow.
100, right around 110 was our last record. It's been several months since we've done that, but it was, it was awesome to see that high of a number. You're going to see October, like there's a lot of good things that happened in October, but it's not quite as good as I was hoping for.
Well,
but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to the solid numbers. As far as the miles run, I actually kind of want to stick on this just a little bit and ask about why that is. As I'm thinking through it, it's kind of sounds just seasonal, right? Kids are back in school. There are no major holidays until the 31st, and even then, it's a working holiday. So, people are banking up their vacation time to use during the Christmas season. Right? Is that all we attribute it to? Is just more people are working longer hours in October?
Yes and no. I think a lot of it is because we had a driver in every truck for the entire month. Like every truck was full and everybody drove hard. And that's probably part of it. Nobody had to be home for vacations or, there were some little vacations, but nothing big in there. It's kind of interesting. I think this is the first time this has ever happened. Every last truck drove at least 10,000 miles.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. They averaged almost 12 as a group. So obviously some were higher than 12, some were lower, but that's everybody ran pretty dang hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I love hearing good records.
Yeah.
I know we've set some bad ones recently. But yeah, that's a good record to have. So 128,000 miles. And how much of that was Deadhead?
So the Deadhead is definitely the highest raw number we've ever had. And the percentage was actually pretty high as well. So it was 11,398 miles.
Okay.
Which
that's a lot.
Almost 9%, 8.9%. And that's the longest we've had in a while. So because it was, that number is different than, kind of what I was expecting, I looked into it a little bit more. We actually had more like really long deadheads than we've ever had. And when I say really long, like over 150 miles, like we had a few that were over 300 miles, which is pretty, like we usually don't have a 300 mile deadhead. We had a couple of them.
You mentioned last time that some of that Deadhead is because we're in the Salt Lake City area, and I don't know why I said Salt Lake City area, so weird, but we're in the Salt Lake City area, and it's harvest up in eastern Idaho and elsewhere in Utah as well. Yeah. So is that what that was? A lot of driving up to Idaho?
There's a little bit of that, yeah. A little bit of the Deadhead up into Idaho to pick up potatoes. Yeah, that was some of it.
Okay.
But even that's not the biggest culprit. Getting back east and just with the way the freight market is and tough, it's like you're just having to go further to find loads.
So is there anything you feel right now like you can do about that number for the next month? Or is that just, hey, this is one of those things that happens sometimes? That's
a good question. Yes, I do think there's things that we can do for it. And we'll talk a little bit about this. One of the things is a little bit trying to get some direct shipper loads. So like for instance, if we, take a load to North Carolina, and there's not a whole lot of freight coming out of North Carolina and we have to go to Atlanta, that's a pretty big drive to get there. So, finding some better relationships in some of the areas where we're consistently delivering to will help. And that's actually one of the things I want to talk about after we get through the numbers.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's keep going through the numbers. Based on that, what do we have for total revenue, Chris? I don't even have a full number.
This is actually an exciting number.
Is it?
Yeah. 274,000. Oh, I typoed. 274,000. I've got it in two places. We're good. So again, $274,592.
And
I didn't do the sentence.
Oh, Chris.
Well, I did, but
is this a lost episode? Do I just shut it off now?
No. We missed the pennies this time.
All right, so 274.
I feel like I failed you. How I failed you, Greg?
You know what? You really have.
I'm sorry.
This would be like me not having a quip or a joke ready at a moment's notice.
So in my notes where I normally put it, for some reason I've deleted the last three digits. And then where I've got it summarized, where I track it regularly, it's rounded. So it doesn't have the pennies. So sorry.
Well, let's
deal
further,
with it.
We're
Get
gonna
over it, Craig.
further round it and call it 275. We'll round up, call it 275K. Is that a record? That's a record. That's a lot.
Almost $50,000.
I was going to say, that's huge.
So more miles, and the total rate per mile on average was better than it has been. So yeah, we had a pretty good month as far as revenue goes.
That rate per average?
It was
rate per mile?
$2.13 a mile.
Okay. So yeah, it's been a few months, it feels like, that we were sub $2.
Yeah.
That was scary and painful.
Yeah, it's been 4 months since we've had a number this high, and there's only been 2 months in the entire year that we've broken that 213. So it's better. And a lot of that is, I don't think so much of that is because of a change in the market per se, but we're getting more and more a higher percentage of our loads, our direct shipper, specifically the stuff coming out of Utah. Like I think in the last month or two, like all of our outbound loads, or very, very close to it, have been from our direct shippers, getting really good rates.
So is the better rates from direct shippers, is that just because, hey, they're willing to pay a little bit extra if they don't have to worry about going onto the spot market and finding the next guy to take the load? Why is that they pay better? And I know this is a question I should have asked about 100 episodes ago, but I'm curious.
The biggest piece actually is because you're cutting out the middleman. Instead of working with the broker,
you don't have to pay the broker.
That broker is probably getting $2.75 a mile, that same that higher rate, but they cut their half and put it out in the spot market where everybody's kind of chasing for the same loads, and so
Okay, well, come to think of it, I probably have asked you that before.
I'm sure we've talked about that.
You know what, Chris? It's hard to retain all this trucking information from my Mazda.
I'll forgive you if you'll forgive me.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let's talk profit and loss. We always like to go over some of the highlights, some interesting things that we want to pull out from this. The one thing I want to ask you is we've had 11 trucks on the road. They're all full, but that's the same number of trucks that we've had in the past. But payroll seems higher than normal. Is that do my eyes deceive me?
No, in fact, if you look at October's payroll that only had 4 Fridays in it, and September's payroll that had 5 Fridays in it, the payroll was almost the same.
Wow.
But that's it makes sense. I mean, we essentially ran we almost ran 25,000 more miles
than September.
Yeah.
So it's because you're paying per mile. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
So that's the big reason why payroll was that much higher.
Yeah. Okay. Any other highlights that you want to pull out from the profit and loss?
Before we do, let's talk about the one that's the most important.
Oh, fuel save.
No.
What's the most important?
The profit or loss.
Oh, we didn't even do that.
We haven't covered that yet. Yeah, you skipped that.
Chris, you know what? I'm really bad.
Do you need to go take a nap?
So bad. So bad. That's right. Am I red? I forgot the thing I was so excited about because I got the 275 number and I got all excited.
I'm here to help you along the way.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad you're here to host this show. All right, Chris, fine. We'll do profit. Now you're smiling, which makes me think that it wasn't a loss.
It wasn't a loss.
Okay. Where did we land?
$8,781.56, which is nowhere where we want to be.
Right.
I mean, and to be all honest with you, like I was kind of disappointed when I saw that number.
Yeah.
I was expecting to be closer to $30,000. But it's one of those things that just makes it okay. We're moving in the right direction. Yeah. I feel like the last couple of months we've done a lot of good things, but we've talked about many a mickle make a muckle. There's some more mickles to be made. We've got some more work to do.
You probably do some field medic training, right, with your National Guard stuff.
Yeah.
What's job number one? Job number one: stop the bleeding.
Stop the bleeding,
and then you can worry about healing.
Yep.
And so, $8,000 as profit may not be healing yet, but hopefully we've stopped the bleeding.
Yeah.
That's the goal anyway.
And I think definitely the big bleeding, we've made a lot of good headway there. I feel like especially in the last 6 months, but really in the last 3 months, we've made some major gains when it comes to our direct shipper relationships and what we're getting there. So that's really what's made a huge difference. Like if you look in January, February this year when we were kind of in a similar type of profit numbers, if we were operating the same today like we were back then, like we'd be like losing way more money.
Oh, I see.
But because we've done such a good job in the last little while of getting those better paying loads from our direct shippers, it's made a difference. But with that being said, there's some things that we need to do differently to kind of get us to that next step. So we'll talk about that. Let's in a minute. First, let's kind of get to where you wanted to be.
You know what?
Covering some of the stuff on the P&L.
Do I finally get to do profit and loss? Okay.
You finally get to do profit and loss.
While you're looking that up, by the way, I want to remind everybody, again, HaulinAssetsLLC.com. You can follow along with these numbers. Show us some love. Like give us some reviews, Facebook, iTunes, wherever it is you listen to your podcast. Give us a review. Love to read those. You know what? I don't think forgetting the cents on your the revenue or accidentally moving ahead to the P&L. I don't think they should ding us for that, Chris.
No,
I think that's not worth a star.
We can't be perfect. Yeah.
All right. Profit and loss statement. What other highlights do you want to pull out?
So we already talked about payroll. You brought that up. That was one thing I want to talk a little bit about. Our last work comp audit payment,
right?
That we talked a little bit about. The makeup cost came out, so that was almost $3,000. Then again, we also had to pay our IFTA payments came out in October.
Oh, right, because that's every fall.
Yeah, between Utah, Oregon, New Mexico, Kentucky. I mean, that was a little over $3,000 there.
Oof.
And our repairs again are just, they've been higher than I would like to see. And I'm hoping after the last bit of repairs that we did, that's going to slow down a little bit. A big chunk of it was truck number 2. That's our oldest truck. It's the one that we bought used.
Was that the last used?
Yeah,
truck?
It's the last used one. So we sold one already. We still have truck 2 that's on the road. It's got about 600, maybe almost 700,000 miles on it now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we're going to have it for too much longer. The driver that's in it really likes it. So part of it will for sure depend on him. As long as he keeps liking it, we may keep it around. But we've put a lot of money into it to try to hopefully, make it last a little bit longer. And hopefully those expenses will slow down a little bit.
I want to remind everybody when it comes to repairs, used trucks and new trucks, I just looked it up. Episode 119 was the episode that we did all about used versus new trucks, what's more profitable in the short term, in the long run. So people can go check that out. If you haven't heard it, if you missed that episode for some reason, or if you're new to the show, check out episode 119. It's actually, I think, extremely valuable, especially to somebody who is looking to get started, with their own first truck. Anyway. Yeah,
that is a good episode. One of the other, so even one of our newer trucks, they still have issues every now and again. Truck number 7, this is one that's kind of really frustrating to me.
Really?
So the truck number 2 last month was about $8,000 worth of repairs. Truck number 7, that's one of the newer ones, not even 2 years old yet, like just over a year actually. It had a $4,200 repair bill. $3,500 of it was a towing bill. So it was really a $700 repair, but a $3,500 tow because it broke down in a terrible spot.
$3,500.
Yeah.
You must have been out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it was a long drive. Plus the driver the driver got picked up at like 1:00 in the morning. It was made for a fun adventure.
Wow.
Yeah, but do you know what it was?
What was?
This is what really ticks me off.
This is a new truck.
This is a newer
one
truck,
of the Freightliners, right?
One of the Freightliners.
Okay, so what was it?
The way that they had built this truck, a wiring harness got jiggled a little bit, and then it rubbed on something and got rubbed through.
Oh, the wiring.
A wiring harness. So it was just a rubbing on a wiring harness, cut through some wires and stopped the truck dead in its tracks. So it's one of those things that, we're past a year, so it's no longer under warranty, but rubbing on a wiring harness. Yeah, just past a year, but rubbing on a wiring harness, I mean, that's something that shouldn't even happen. Like that's
like ever.
Yeah, that's like a huge major manufacturer's defect. Like they didn't do something right to make that happen. And so we're working with the dealership that we bought the truck from, seeing if we can get all or part of that $4,200 we spent covered. And so fingers crossed, we'll see what happens.
Well, it's like your grandma always said, Chris. You rub it too much, bad things happen. Okay.
What do you mean? Explain to me. Is there a story at the end of the podcast?
There is not.
Now you're turning red.
Yeah, no. Actually, so I'm going to steer away from that joke. And I just looked it up on our YouTube channel, actually, Chris, the new versus used truck episode.
Yeah.
It's not even close. It's our most popular episode on YouTube.
Good. Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, okay. Now that I've changed the subject successfully, okay. What else do we need to go over?
P&L wise, I think that's kind of it at this point. We can jump into the last thing I want to talk about.
Okay. Well, and what is that?
So
what do you got?
Alluded to it. We like I was saying, we've made some really good gains, but there's still work that needs to be done and really to kind of get us to the next level. And ultimately, this is what's going to make a trucking company like truly profitable, is getting more of our backhauls direct from shippers. So we're not relying on the spot market from them. So that's one of the big things. So like I've started to, with us working more with direct shippers, one of the other benefits of that is they have a tendency, like their customers a lot of the times are the same. So they end up sending us on similar routes. Like we're finding that our trucks are going to the same cities multiple times a month, which is going to make it that much easier for us to go into those cities and say, hey, find 3 or 4 people that ship out of there and see if we can kind of do a similar type thing and get some freight out of them. And so we're going to start being a little bit more deliberate there, trying to work on those backhauls now that we've got the initial haul out of Utah working really, really well. We need to focus our energy on doing the same thing with our backhauls.
This question might be too big for a financials episode. This might be an entire episode by itself, but we've talked in the past about how to kind of play the numbers game and develop personal relationships and kind of how to play that sales game when it comes to creating direct shipper relationships. But I'd be really interested to find out some of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of how you get information, like, which companies to contact, which companies are exporting to Utah, from these cities or from these states. I'd be really interested to dig into the kind of almost the economics and of how this works and how you get your info and all that. So like I said, probably too big a question for today, but something to consider.
Yeah. Like I said, Nate and I are going to be spending a little bit more time, developing that. And obviously that's one of those things that, will probably get us some pretty good things to talk about on the podcast.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So what is on the docket coming up then for Haulin Assets? What do you guys want to concentrate on? What does the future hold, the near future?
Just focusing a lot on that and a little bit better load analysis or lane analysis. So like looking at some of these areas that we go into consistently, just really deep diving into them. Okay, let's use Atlanta, for example. I mean, we go a decent amount to the Atlanta area. Are we going to be able to find loads that get us directly back to Utah, or is there something else that's going to be better? Like maybe from Utah to Kansas City, or from Georgia to Kansas City back to Utah, or down to Texas first and then up it. So just really kind of trying to hone in to where can we get, get those good rates. Because you take, for example, I just sent a truck down into Florida, and this going into Florida. Like Florida, getting out of Florida is terrible. It's a big big state, and you'd think they have more like agriculture and fruit and things than they do, and you'd think they'd maybe import through their ports more than they do, but you just don't get as much leaving the state of Florida as you have coming in, and so it's just really hard to get rates out of there, and so you have to get a really good rate coming in, but you're probably going to be getting $1.30, $1.50 coming out, which is nothing. It's not enough to cover even really your all your variable costs, let alone your fixed costs.
Man,
I mean, just fuel and driver alone, you're typically talking. That's probably pretty close to that $1.30 mark.
Come on, Florida, figured out. All right. Chris, anything else that we want to talk about today before we call it quits?
I think that's kind of about it. That's all I got.
All right. Well, if people will stick around, I'll give you another 25 minutes of your grandmother's recommendations for how to live your life. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We will see you all next time.
All right. Thanks, Craig.
Welcome, everybody. Again, that's twice in a row, Chris. This is no good.